This is an HR program on demand, a living seed capsule of work life and workplace coming live from a rooftop in Stockholm, Sweden. It's me, Ann-Marie Andrich, and
me, Katarina Berg.
A vodcast, if you like, on HR, straight across the counter. Sponsored by HRTheRealDeal, HR by HR for HR. So Katarina, let's talk about leadership, one of our favorite topics, right?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Would you say that leadership is different in times of crisis?
I would say, well, the short answer is no. Good leadership is good leadership, bad leadership is bad leadership. And unfortunately, that is the same. But what happens in a crisis, I think everything gets amplified. So a couple of people that not necessarily are strong or visible leaders can actually step out of the shadow. And some that you think are senior, seasoned, whatever, kind of steps into the wallpaper a bit. And I think that is what happens and to many people's surprise during a crisis. But I think the willingness and the courage to lead is always important. And then I think during a crisis like this, and when we are forced to be home, you have to rethink your toolbox a bit, right? How do you stay present? How do you do your check-ins? How do you make sure that your team and your team members are doing all right? How do you check that they know where you're going? And all those things. And you might also have to work a bit more on the empathy, right? So to be empathetic, important, right? And it's always, but it might be even more important. And to be present, always important, but maybe now even more important. So I think it's just more about things, and that you have to be a bit more conscious about how you lead in times like these. But on that topic of leadership, I know that for instance, you just did something that is pretty, I think, amazing, but also inspirational, but also a big undertake when it comes to leadership at Husqvarna. You just had a hackathon that was called a Shape-a-thon.
Shape 25-a-thon.
Okay,
yeah.
Shape. It's even hard to say. It's Shape 25-a-thon. And if you can say it, you can still remain a manager, or how does that work?
Exactly. That was the blueprint, right? When we started. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for picking that up. Yeah, we did actually. And the reason why it's Shape 25-a-thon is because we're, like many companies, obviously we're on a journey. It's huge, it's transformational. And we set a strategy for the next few years. The strategy is called Shape 25. We're shaping the organization for 2025. So as we were doing that, we obviously also looked at, okay, so what does this mean for our people, our culture, and our leaders? And then we decided that, you know, we need to have a common ground on what is leadership at Husqvarna division. You know, what are the competencies and behaviors that we need to agree on is going to be important for us, so that we can lead and develop our people in the best possible way for the next few years through this huge transformation, right? And then, you know, we were thinking, so who knows best what leadership for the future will look like? Well, obviously our leaders. So we asked them. So we decided that let's ask them as inclusive as we possibly can, given the fact that we cannot gather physically in one room. So we decided to do a Shape 25-a-thon, and that is basically we were hacking leadership throughout 16 hours. So we started in Asia, in Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. And we toured the world with the technology, as you can do nowadays. Now, we use Microsoft Teams, and I have to say that because I'm an ex-Microsoftie, right? So I'm promoting a bit.
Always a softie.
Always a softie, exactly. So we started 6 a.m. CET in Asia and toured the world, 11 workshops, and ended in North America, 16 hours later, 33 countries, 5 time zones, basically asking, you know, what kind of leadership do you think will be super critical for us on our Shape 25 journey? I have to say it was, when we were designing this, I thought this was super cool. When we were doing it, it just confirmed to me it was even cooler than I thought. And the level of energy and engagement was absolutely amazing. So that was sort of our first draft of the leadership competences, if you wished.
It's very hard to listen to you and not think about how this was done old school, not necessarily with leadership, but with learning. So it takes me back to the book, Around the World in 80 Days, right? And with now the technology, it's around the world in 16 hours. How many managers?
900.
900 plus managers.
Yeah.
And 100% digital for sure.
100% digital. Yeah.
And driven and facilitated by 2 facilitators in
HR.
And based in most likely in Sweden,
in
right?
Sweden, yeah.
And how do you do that?
You just do it because you can.
You just do it because you can. But how did you set that up? I'm guessing that a lot of people would like to, at least when we did Passion Tour, people thought that was hard, but we did that face to face. And people did understand how we moved and then moved around the world. And of course, that was not 16 hours. It took us a couple of weeks, if not 2 months, right? So how did you do that and why did you decide to do it that way?
Well, the reason why we decided to do it that way was basically because we could not meet physically. The original plan was, honestly, to do what we typically would have done, and that is to gather the, let's say, 100 most senior managers globally across the division in a physical space, and we were going to do the same thing, right? But then as the crisis emerged during spring, we very quickly realized that, okay, there will not be a physical meeting, but this is still super important for us, and this builds the foundation of our growth journey, of our leadership and our culture journey. So we just need to rethink this. And as we were rethinking it, we then very quickly came to the conclusion that why limit ourselves now? I mean, the physical room, maybe budgets also, maybe traveling did limit us. We could not invite more than 900 leaders to a physical room or a place. And then we said, with technology, we can actually embrace and we can include everyone. So I would say that was one of the positive things about the crisis, was that our inclusion, actually.
Right. It enabled you to do it.
It enabled us. And it also enabled collaboration, I think, and also leveraging on the wealth of knowledge, skills, and diversity that we have in the division. That was actually enabled by the crisis, which was very interesting, right? And then I would say that the way that we designed that workshop, those 11, they looked similar. So it was 45 minutes, very interactive, very quick. It basically started with me giving an introduction. What is this? Why are we doing this? Or rather, why are we doing this? What are we going to do? And this is how we are going to ask the questions for you to give us your feedback and reflections. We did it rather simply. We used the Menti, right? So we asked questions and people were then answering. And it was open-ended questions, it was closed questions, it was ranking. It gave us a lot of data that we then crunched, right? We crunched that data, and then the week after, so this happened in a 2 weeks period, then the week after, which was actually last week, we gathered 400 of those 900 into what we call then a growth summit, right? The growth summit was 3 half days. The purpose of the growth summit was to do the second draft of that leadership competencies and behaviors, using the data that we got from the Shape 25-a-thon. So we had both work on defining that second draft, but we also sort of sprinted the agenda with learning tracks on topics that we think is super important for our leaders to raise the awareness of, where are we going, to boost that inspiration and to give a bit of, knowledge and experience. And it was also very interactive, those 3 half days. So when we closed on Friday last week, basically we have the second draft of our leadership competences and behaviors. And the third draft we will continue to work on now for the next coming weeks. And then the plan is that by October, we basically have finalized, what kind of expectations do we have on our leaders? What is our desired behaviors? What will we hire? What will we develop our leaders on? And I think that bringing that clarity to our leaders is exactly what we need in order for us to continue with our people strategy and what we now call the GROW at Husqvarna Division.
Got it. Thank you. So going into all of this, there was, I imagine, a couple of moments where you had to sell the idea. What was the reaction going into the whole Shape 25 and the leadership, like really trying to capture the leadership criteria going forward? What was the reaction going in, but also what was the reaction during those days and sessions and hackathon?
I think, on the selling, we obviously did something that we have not done before, right? I remember when I pitched this idea to my manager, who's the president of the division, his comment was, "Anne-Marie, this is disturbingly disruptive." And I think that sort of says it all, right? It's disruptive, but it's disturbingly disruptive in the sense that this will shake things in our organization in ways that we've never been shook before. And I think he also realized that, there would be people in the organization who would say, I'm not comfortable with this. And there would be people who would jump, right, immediately. And then we would have, quite a few of our people saying, wow, this is cool, this is interesting, but let me digest this a bit, right? And then I remember when I was presenting this to our management team for the first time, and I think they concluded the same thing. This is so different from what we've done, but it is also well needed. I think that what they focused on, which was quite interesting for me, was more like, how will you actually do this? Because we increased the scope of managers as we included all of our managers. So they were more focused, not particularly on, the content and what we wanted to achieve. That I think everyone was sort of, a check-in, buy-in. It was more like, Anne-Marie, how do you do that with technology? And this is where I say, trust me on this one, trust the process, we will figure this one out. Right. And we did. And I think that is also the beauty of where we are nowadays, 2020. Technology is there. And if you think about the design, then technology is the enabler. It actually helps you to be maybe more inclusive than you typically would have been if you did not have technology and if you gathered just a small group of people in one room. But it was a bit of selling. And I remember I was using, words that in our industry maybe is, because we come from a traditional industry, hackathon. What is a hackathon? So I had to explain what a hackathon is. So there were a few things that I needed to do, or we needed to do. And then when we started the Shape 25-a-thon, I think what was amazing was how quickly people got it, how quickly our leaders were up for it, and how honest they were. Because we checked in with them to say at the end of the session, so how do you feel now? And obviously we did a check-in in the beginning as well of the session. But we also, in that huge word cloud that we got during the workshop, where they were saying we were inspired, we're excited, we're looking forward, we're hopeful, we also got a few who were saying, I'm stressed or I'm confused. And I appreciated that we also got that honesty from the people who, you know, were not completely there yet, right? It basically means that that's fine, because if you don't feel that it's not hurting a bit, then
it wasn't development.
You're not moving forward, so it's fine. And we also said that during the Growth Summit, and also during the Shape 25-a-thon. We acknowledged that. We said, we're doing something completely different. If you think that this is a bit uncomfortable, strange, or even odd, that's fine. It means that we're doing something different. We're taking steps further forward. So I think that is also important, just to say, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's different better or good, as long as it's not different bad or worse. And then again, I think everything you do, right, with leadership or with these journeys, you don't do it to end up in the same place. You do them to either shape, right, or shake up.
Exactly.
Or you do them to get a change, and most likely to get like a growth on the individual, but also in the organization. And then to give or sprinkle more the sameness is not really making it. So that uncomfortable, at ease, a bit stress, I think it's all good signs, right? And it seems like that was the response from your 900 or 400 leaders too.
Yeah, it was. And I have to say, it was, you know, whoever is listening to this, if you have the chance, just do it. I mean, it's amazing. And I think it's also a great way of bringing everyone on board. And then there is another aspect to this. When you do this bottom-up exercise, include everyone on the journey, when you take this forward and you reshape or fine-tune a bit, the whole anchoring then is basically done, because you included everyone. So you don't have to do that selling. You don't have to do that pitch again, because everyone was a part of the journey. And that's the beauty, right, of designing a journey like this.
Fantastic. So thank you for sharing. I'm pretty sure that there is a lot of HR professionals that are either thinking, wishing, or wanting that they would do something like that and have all the skill set, but don't really know how to get through. So what is your biggest 3 takeaways from these 2 big investments from you and your lead team into the rest of the organization to make sure that you have successful leaders going forward?
Well, I would, again, think of, why are you doing it? It's the first thing. Why are you doing it? And anchor it in the journey. So it's not something that HR does on the side. It has to be anchored in your mission, your way forward, in strategy and plan, what have you, in your business. I think that is super important, because then it comes alive. It's not something that is isolated. The other thing is obviously to make sure that you also have thought about how do you design this process so it's intentional. So whatever steps you are taking, it has a purpose and you know where it's leading. And then I would say the third thing would be, just have the management team, have your peers with you. I think the tone from the top is super important. And even if it needs a bit of convincing, even if it needs a bit of sort of, iteration, it's important that they stand behind you. So it's not only HR who drives this, right? Because it's us as leaders. And then if you have the opportunity and you don't have, let's say you don't have the resources yourself, make sure you partner up with someone who knows this. So you have a good external partner. In this case, we also had that. So I'm really appreciative of that support.
Good. And I would most likely add, no guts, no glory, right?
No guts, no glory. Exactly. You have to be a bit bold and courageous, even if it's crazy sometimes and you think it's maybe too big, but it worked.
Yeah. So should we wrap up?
I think. And how do we typically wrap it up? So, Katarina is your name.
Always with 3 things, right? It's stay safe, stay strong, stay active.
I det medalje.